Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, going back to the Kyle Rittenhouse interview by Tucker Carlson on his program, Carlson's program last night. In terms of looking prospectively, is there more litigation to come involving Kyle Rittenhouse, specifically defamation cases, perhaps against then-candidate Joe Biden, now president, as well as media outlets a la Nick Sandmann, the Covington Catholic kid? Here's what Rittenhouse said to that.
I have really good lawyers who are taking care of that right now. So I'm hoping one day there will be accountability for their actions that they did.
Okay, so you're intent on you're not going to let that go.
Like I said, really good lawyers are handling that.
Yeah.
They must be, because they told him if he's asked that question, just say really good lawyers are handling it, which
Perfect.
he did. For more on this, as well as the criminal trial, of course, pleased to be joined by Alan Dershowitz, Emeritus Professor of Law at Harvard. His new podcast, The Dersh Show, you see what he did there?
Yes.
The Dersh Show can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. And his most recent book is The Case for Vaccine Mandates. We'll have to discuss that perhaps at another time. Professor Dershowitz, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's start with the possible civil case, and It was interesting because Rittenhouse used the phrase "actual malice," so he's schooling himself, or has been schooled on the standard against a public official like himself. But do you think it is worth Rittenhouse pursuing defamation against media outlets or even the president?
Not the president, because what the president said was just inferential. A picture was shown of Rittenhouse when he was talking generally about white supremacists. But anybody who directly called him a white supremacist, or anyone who said that he carried illegally an AR-15 across state lines, or anyone who said that he had no business being in Kenosha, that he had no relatives there, people who made outright lies should be subject to a defamation under the First Amendment. The First Amendment makes an exception for malicious, deliberate, willful lies, and CNN engaged in those lies over and over and over again. And, Don Lemon sitting there and saying he wasn't really crying, it was crocodile tears. Other people saying it was white privilege tears. Another woman saying that he should get the Oscar for winning the best performance. Those weren't matters of opinion. Fortunately, it was shown on live TV, and everybody could see it for themselves and know that Don Lemon was not telling the truth, and that others were engaging in kind of racist characterization. If it was a young black man who was crying on the stand, they wouldn't have dared to challenge his authenticity or his credibility. So I have actually offered to share my research with the Rittenhouse defense team if they decide to bring a lawsuit against CNN. I'm bringing a lawsuit against CNN. As you may know, they doctored a tape of mine when I argued my case for President Trump in front of the United States Senate. They actually omitted certain statements from my tape. I said that if the president committed crimes, he could be impeached, and they omitted that and then had their commentators saying, Dershowitz says even if a president commits crimes, murder and other crimes, he can't be impeached. So, I've done a lot of research against CNN. They have a long, long record of lying to fill their narrative. So, I hope civil lawsuits, and I hope there is accountability for deliberate, willful lying that continued even after the verdict.
Well, yeah, and so after the verdict, our governor in Illinois tweeted this: carrying a loaded gun into a community 20 miles from your home and shooting unarmed citizens is fundamentally wrong. Would he have a case against Governor Pritzker?
No, not at all, because fundamentally wrong is a matter of opinion, number one. Mm-hmm. And he did bring a gun into Kenosha. He didn't bring it across state lines. But no, there would be no case against Pritzker, but there would be cases against anybody who calling somebody a vigilante may be a matter of opinion, and that's protected speech. But white supremacist is not an opinion, it's a fact. If you, for example, call somebody an anti-Semite, and there's no history that he ever said anything negative against Jews, or you call somebody, a racist or anything like that, and there's no history of that, that's defamatory, and the courts have so held.
I wanted to add one more question about the media. This was actually raised by a caller, and it's sort of an interesting proposition, and I know how high the threshold is going to be here, but wanted your take on it. The idea when the media purposely engages in lying in such a way as to incite, arguably, is there any line at which a member of the media can cross where they are part of a conspiracy to incite a riot and thus have criminal culpability for whatever results?
That's a very hard question. There are a few cases on that. During the genocide in Rwanda, the nation was held culpable because it incited people to go to people's home and kill them. In that case, it actually told them where the people lived. It's a very, very, very hard line to cross, to have criminal liability for something that somebody says. Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, every idea is an incitement. So I don't think there's any real possibility. Also, the idea that he's a public figure, he's at most a qualified public figure. He's not a public figure. He's not like you and me. You're on the radio, I'm in the media. He's a kid who tried to do what he thought was the right thing. I'm not making a hero out of him, by the way. I think what he did, in my view, is that he shouldn't have gone there, and he shouldn't have been carrying an AR-15. But he's not really a public figure. He was thrust into public figure-dom by the case itself. And so they're kind of intermediate standard, but it's higher than just if they just went after somebody who was never in the public at all.
Now, as to the trial itself, you wrote about this in The Hill, that there's a general misunderstanding about the issue that was actually at bar at the trial, and the only issue, the issue in which the entire case turned, was did he have a reasonable fear for serious bodily harm or death, thus that the action he took was legal, and that's what the jury concluded he did.
Yeah, and not only that, it's did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't have that fear?
Right.
The state has to prove the negative. It's a hard burden, but it's the law. It's the law in Wisconsin. It's the law in most states that the burden of proof is on the government to disprove self-defense. So it was not a hard or complicated case as a matter of law. If you listen to some of the Hollywood glitterati, I mean, the statements made by some Hollywood people were so unbelievably stupid after the verdict. I mean, there bore no reflection on the actual facts of the case themselves, but I guess if you're a Hollywood star, you're not bound by facts. You have the right to make up, after all, you're in fictional movies all the time. You might as well make up fictional stories about people. So there are potential lawsuits also against some members of the Hollywood community for whom there's always a narrative. People just have this concept of intersectionality. There's a story, and the story has to be told. For example, in Brooklyn, the day after the verdict, there were large demonstrations right where I was born and grew up in Brooklyn. And the demonstrations were led by people carrying Palestinian flags and yelling, "Intifada, Intifada." For people like that, if there's a problem anywhere in the world, of course the Jews are to blame. Of course Israel is to blame, because that's part of it. And the name of the group that was leading it was Black Lives for Palestine. What's that? One thing has to do with the other. But to be an intersectionalist, you have to be willing to buy every aspect of their narrative at all. And that's the problem. That's why we're such a divided country today.
Is there any question in your mind as to whether or not the charges should have been brought in the first place?
That's what I was going to ask.
The charges against the man who testified on the witness stand that he first pointed the gun at him and then he was shot should never have been brought. The attempted murder charges should never have been brought. The others were close questions. I think if they had studied all the evidence, if they had really given the lawyers a chance to present their case, they probably wouldn't have brought it. It was a pretty clear case of self-defense. I mean, the only argument on the other side is that he provoked it, but the concept of provocation under Wisconsin law is very, very narrow, and you don't put on a whole week of a person. The provocation has to occur imminently, right at the time. So I think it was a mistake probably to bring the case, unlike the case in Georgia, which was the right case, to bring the case that's now pending where 3 people shot a black man who was job. That, too, was an easy case on the other side. It shouldn't be brought. And We'll see what the verdict is, but this case probably should never have been brought. And if it wasn't for the climate of the day, it's a little bit like the Potter case, the Officer Potter in Minneapolis who made a mistake and pulled the wrong gun and shot somebody thinking that she was using her taser.
Right.
That case should never have been brought. That was an accident. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy, but not a crime. But political pressure was such that it was brought. Let's remember one thing that people forget. We are the only country in the history of the world, categorically, in the history of the world that has ever elected prosecutors. Every other country, they're civil service, they're appointed, they're distinguished lawyers, they're not trying to run for the Senate, they're not trying to run for governor. In the United States, being a prosecutor means you want to be a senator or a governor, and you put your finger up to the wind and you decide what's best for your political campaign. It's not the right approach, and it's what causes charging higher or charging cases that should never be charged because they're not interested so much in justice as they are in their political careers.
Yeah, that's an interesting reform conversation about how we do state and local prosecutors, no question, because obviously it's not just an issue in Kenosha County. It's all over the country now with these Soros-funded prosecutors. He is Alan Dershowitz, famed Harvard Law professor, Emeritus. His new podcast, The Dersh Show, can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. His most recent book, The Case for Vaccine Mandates. Professor Dershowitz, thanks as always for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, Barry Sterner, founder of your number one home mortgage company, Townstone Financial. Want to close your loan quickly? Want to work with a company with the newest technologies in the mortgage business and get all this with great rates and low closing costs? Then look no further. The answer is Townstone.com. What else does Townstone currently have? How about the low interest rate Home Ready program and Home Possible for home purchases that come with free appraisals? We are also obtaining appraisal waivers on many types of refinances and purchases for conventional loans, which will save you over $450 in closing costs. Don't want to find your bank statement or pay stubs? Well, with our new technology, we can obtain these in many cases without you lifting a finger. Remember, it doesn't matter if you're searching for a jumbo mortgage, FHA, VA, or even a reverse mortgage. I guarantee no one is going to beat Townstone's interest rates and low closing costs, and I own the company. So give us a call now at 312-896-2110 because nobody values your home purchase and refinance business more than Townstone.com. That's TOWNSTONE.com.
Townstone Financial is licensed in Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, NMLS 136639, www.nmlsconsumerAccess.org, Equal Housing Lender.
All right. Do something for yourself. Be proactive. Take balance of nature. I take it to have a strong, healthy immune system. I'm still going strong. Why? Well, doctors who've been on the show say get enough sleep, exercise, and eat a well-balanced diet, which I know you're not doing on your own. And that's where balance of nature comes in. Give it to yourself, your parents, siblings, friends, children. What it is 6 capsules. You're getting 10 servings.